The gates closed behind him. Sky above was not blue. It was deep red, almost like blood, and the air smelled of metal and smoke. In the center of a massive arena stood 13 beings. From across the galaxy, some were covered in thick scales. Others had glowing skin, sharp claws, or armor made from living creatures. All of them looked dangerous. And then there was John Carter, a human from Earth. He stood there in plain clothes, no armor, no weapons, just a small bag hanging from his shoulder and dirt on his boots. The others stared at him. Some laughed, some ignored him. To them, he looked weak, soft, out of place. But John didn't flinch. His heart was pounding, yes, but his eyes were calm. He knew something they did in single quotes from tall black towers at the edge of the arena. A loud voice echoed in every language. Welcome to the Death Labyrinth. 13 enter. 1 leaves. You know the rules. Survival is the only victory. Suddenly, heavy metal gates behind each of them began to close with a deep, grinding noise. Boom, boom, boom. The walls locked tight. There was no going back. John felt a gust of hot wind brush past his face. He looked up and saw the walls of the arena beginning to shift and move. What once looked like a flat floor now separated into long, dark hallways. Traps, puzzles, and nightmares waited within. He had read the reports. He knew the legends. No one had ever survived. As the others began to charge forward, some roaring, some vanishing into shadows. John stood still. He reached into his bag and pulled out something small. It looked simple, almost useless. It was a metal tube, a cheap Earth-made flint fire starter. The aliens didn't even notice. To them, fire was either unknown or sacred. In many parts of the galaxy, fire didn't exist. Their technology was based on energy fields, plasma, or liquid light. Fire was considered primitive. Weak. John smiled, because weakness was the plan. He turned and entered the hallway on his right. The walls were cold, wet, breathing, almost. Lights flickered above, casting strange shadows. It smelled like old blood and oil. John moved carefully. His boots made soft taps against the metal floor. He listened. He breathed through his mouth, and then he heard a low growl. He turned. Fast Dan saw it, a massive beast with 4 arms and a face like a lion, but made of stone. Its red eyes locked onto him. The creature opened its mouth, revealing rows of sharp, black teeth. It started running toward him on all 4s. The floor shook beneath its weight. John didn't scream. He didn't run. Instead, he dropped to 1 knee and clicked the flint. Spark, spark, flame. The beast froze. Its eyes widened in horror. The flame danced in John's hand, small but alive. He held it up slowly, letting the firelight touch the creature's face. The beast whimpered. It stepped back. Then it roared, not in anger, but in fear, and turned around, smashing through a wall as it ran away. John stood up, heart racing. That worked, he whispered. It actually worked. He put the fire out carefully and moved forward. Behind him, hidden cameras watched. Somewhere far away, alien commanders observed the screens. One of them leaned forward. The human uses fire. Another one frowned. Primitive, but smart. Back inside the maze, John walked into a new room. This one was full of mirrors. But something was wrong. His reflection didn't follow him. It moved before he did. John stared. The reflection stepped out of the mirror and took a fighting stance. It was him, his face, his body but twisted, evil. So this is what fear looks like here, John muttered. He had no weapons, but he had his mind. He remembered something. His grandmother once said, "When you face yourself, don't fight, understand." So he didn't swing. He didn't strike. He stepped forward and said, "I'm not scared of you. You're scared of me." The mirror self paused. Its face changed. The reflection dropped its fists and slowly melted back into the glass, the door. A head opened. John walked through it. Behind him, the death labyrinth adjusted. It had underestimated the human now. It was angry. The first trap, and the fire that shouldn't exist. New hallway felt different. John Carter could feel it in the air, thicker, heavier, like breathing inside a machine that hated him. The lights above were dim and flickering, casting moving shadows along the walls. A strange sound echoed in the distance. Not footsteps, not growling. Breathing. Deep, slow, and mechanical. He kept walking, staying close to the wall. Every few steps, he touched it. The metal was warm. That was wrong, very wrong. He looked down. The floor was shifting slightly, like it was alive. John paused, thinking. Back on Earth, he used to work on tunnels and underground systems. This didn't feel like a hallway. It felt like a trap, a stomach, and he had just walked into his throat. His heart beat faster, but fear wouldn't help him now. He pulled out the flint again, holding it tight. Suddenly, the lights went out. Complete darkness. A low hiss rose from the floor. Then, movement. John dropped to the ground and rolled to his side just in time, as something sharp flew over his head and stuck into the wall behind him. He couldn't see it, but he heard it vibrating, metal against metal. The maze is testing me now. He thought, this isn't random anymore. It's watching. He crawled forward carefully and clicked the flint. A spark flashed, showing him dozens of tiny holes in the wall's launchers, a dark trap. He remembered old stories from Earth, ancient pyramids, temples, same principle, different planet. But these darts were alien. They pulsed with electricity. One hit, and he'd be paralyzed. 2 hits, and he'd be dead. He couldn't run. The floor might be unstable. So he did something that no one expected. He laughed. Not loud, just a soft chuckle to himself. Because he remembered something stupid, something from an old Earth cartoon. A joke. In the middle of a death trap, John Carter laughed at a memory. And then, he got an idea. He tore off a piece of his shirt and tied it to the end of his flare stick. Then he crawled to the edge of the hallway and threw it down the path like a torch. It bounced once, twice. Click, click, click. The dart shot forward, all at once clearing the trap. John waited. Silence. He stood and moved forward, now safe. At the end of the hallway was a door. It opened automatically. The next room was a long chamber with tall pillars and glowing walls. Strange alien carvings covered every surface. They told stories of champions, of warriors from other planets who had entered the maze and died. All of them. Their faces were carved into the stone with glowing red X's over their eyes. All except one. A blank space, waiting for him. He turned and saw a new figure standing. Behind him, Creel, a lizard-like creature with rough green skin and yellow eyes. Creel was one of the original 13 who entered. Somehow, he had survived the first chamber. He looked injured, with a burn across his arm, but he was still strong. You, Creel hissed. You used fire. The others spoke of it before they died. What is it? John held up the flint, but didn't spark it. Creel took a step forward. I followed you. I saw the beast run. What is this power? Human. John didn't answer. Instead, he asked, why are you following me? Creel paused, then said something John didn't expect. I don't want to die. There was a silence. Between them, an unspoken agreement formed. To survivors, to enemies, now possibly allies. But John didn't trust easily. You touch me, I burn you, he warned, holding up the flint. Creel nodded once, understood. The two moved deeper into the chamber together, side by side. But John knew this alliance was made of fear, not friendship. They reached a large round door. Alien symbols lit up. A voice spoke again from nowhere. Two may pass. One will remain. The door opened and then slammed shut behind them the moment they stepped in. They were now in a new part of the labyrinth. This room was colder, narrower. Wires and pipes hung from the ceilings. Sparks flew from broken panels. Suddenly, the lights turned red. An alarm. The floor beneath them began to shift. Panels opened. Long, sharp tendrils rose from the ground, spinning. A killing chamber. Creel roared and ran forward, leaping over the first trap, but he slipped. One of the tendrils sliced across his back. He screamed, but kept running. John followed, more careful. He used the flare stick again, swinging the fire in a circle to confuse the sensors. Some of the tendrils backed off. Others twisted in confusion. He reached Creel and helped pull him up. You saved me, Creel gasped. No, John said. I saved myself. You just didn't die yet. Creel looked at him differently after that. The two of them limped to the far end of the chamber and found another door. But this time, it didn't open. Instead, a screen lit up above it, showing the rest of the competitors. Dead, all of them, burned, crushed, drowned, eaten, only to remain. Creel looked at John. The maze wants one of us. John nodded slowly. It will get neither. Cliffhanger. Just then, the walls around them shifted and John and Creel were split apart by a sudden rising barrier. On Creel's side, a hiss of gas filled the room. John shouted, "Creel!" but he couldn't get through, and on his side, something was breathing in the dark. The maze that thinks John Carter stood frozen. The thick steel barrier had risen from the ground in an instant, sealing off the path behind him. On the other side, he could no longer see Creel. He could only hear the faint hiss of gas and the pounding fist of a lizard warrior trying not to die. He banged on the wall. "Creel." No response. Just the maze's silence. John took a deep breath. His instincts screamed at him to panic, but he didn't. He forced his breath steady, in and out. That's how he had survived Earth's disasters, fires, earthquakes, storms. This was just another kind of storm. He turned around. The hallway ahead was dark, very dark, but this time it wasn't from a lack of light. It was from too much thought. The walls were made of smooth black material, almost like glass. They reflected not his face, but pieces of his memories, his childhood room, the face of his mother, the blinking screen of the space shuttle that brought him here. But the images were wrong. His mother's smile was twisted. His bedroom door was on fire. The space shuttle showed him dead in the pilot's seat. He knew what this was now. "It's not just a maze," John whispered. "It's learning." The labyrinth wasn't stone and traps. It was a mind, a living, changing intelligence. And now it was trying to break him. Every wall he touched felt warm like skin. He noticed veins pulsing beneath the floor. This place had a heartbeat. He was walking through something alive. A faint voice echoed in the hallway, not in the air, in his mind. "What are you, little thing?" He froze. "You're in my head." "Yes," the voice whispered. "I've studied many species, fighters, killers, machines. You are different." John swallowed hard. He didn't answer. The hallway widened into a chamber shaped like a perfect circle. In the middle was a table smooth and silver with 13 chairs. 12 of them were occupied by frozen holograms. All the competitors, all the ones who died. One by one, the images flickered. A giant with red skin and a hearts dead by fire. A tall female alien with wings trapped in ice. A machine being shattered from within. Each one lit up in red dot. And then came John's seat, still empty, still flickering. He stepped forward cautiously. "You don't fight," said the voice. "You calculate." He whispered, "You're scared of me." There was silence. Then the walls shivered. John pulled the flint fire starter from his bag and sparked it once. The flame danced again. He felt stronger holding it. This small flame, so simple, so basic, terrified something vast and powerful. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the fastest. But he was something this labyrinth had never faced. A problem it couldn't predict. Suddenly, a loud clang rang out. Behind him, a new door opened, slowly, as if reluctant. The maze was inviting him deeper, but not with confidence, with curiosity as John walked through. He didn't notice the small black sphere floating just behind him watching, recording. Blinking he entered a tall room shaped like a tower. Platforms floated in the air, spinning slowly. No stairs, no path, a climb. The walls were covered in moving symbols, languages from 1,000 worlds. At the top of the room was a pulsing blue light, some kind of exit, maybe, or maybe another. John studied the platforms. They weren't random. Each one shifted in a pattern. He waited, timed them, then he jumped one platform, then another. He climbed carefully, using balance and instinct. As he rose, the room got colder. Wind swirled around him. Halfway up, a platform vanished beneath his feet. He fell hard but managed to catch a lower edge. His shoulder screamed in pain, but he didn't let go. Instead, he laughed. "Trying to cheat me," he said to the air. "You'll have to try harder." The maze answered. A sharp alarm rang out. Platforms began spinning. Faster, symbols on the walls started glowing red. John climbed harder, faster, using every bit of strength he had left. He remembered training in Earth's gravity chambers, those painful days of zero-G simulations, space jumps, and fear of falling forever. He had prepared for this. The last platform was just ahead. He reached for it and saw a shape waiting. KREL. Alive. Badly. Burned. Bleeding. But alive. Human. Krill growled. "You left me. I couldn't help you. You didn't try." John pulled himself up. "Are we doing this now?" Krill's tail twitched. His claws were out, but he didn't strike. Instead, he collapsed. John caught him. Krill whispered, "It tricked me, made me see things, made me believe you betrayed me." John stared at him. "It's not just a maze. It's a mirror." He looked up. The blue light at the top wasn't an exit. It was an eye. Watching. Waiting. "Show me more." The voice said and then the floor disappeared. John and Creel fell, faster than thought, down through blinking lights and spinning walls. They landed in a round room made of glass, and in front of them stood John Carter, another version of him, older, colder, smiling. "Welcome," the clone said, "to your final lesson. The enemy behind him is an alien." John Carter stared at the impossible. Another him. Same face, same voice, same memories, but colder, calculated. This version wore a long black coat and a smug expression. His eyes didn't blink. He stood like someone who had already won. Creel lay behind John, still weak, coughing from the fall. John slowly reached into his side pocket, gripping the flint fire starter just in case. "What is this?" John asked, breathing hard. The clone smiled. "Not what, who, I'm you, or what you could become if you let this place finish its work." John shook his head. "You're not me." "You sure?" The clone said. "I know how it started. I know why you volunteered for this mission. I know about your sister's illness. How Earth said they couldn't afford her treatment. So you signed up for the death labyrinth." John flinched. The memory was private, buried deep. Nobody on this planet knew, but the clone leaned forward. "You didn't come here to survive. You came to win, to prove to them that a human's life has value." The lights dimmed. The glass walls began showing images, scenes from John's past. His sister, Anna, laughing in her hospital bed. His mother crying at the spaceport. The moment he stepped into the ship to leave Earth, knowing he might never return, John's voice trembled. "You don't get to use her." "I don't have to," the clone replied. "You already did." The words cut deep. Creel groaned behind him. "What is happening?" "Human." John didn't answer. His hands clenched. His breath shook. He wasn't fighting an alien. He was fighting the guilt inside him. The maze had learned what scared him most and shaped it into a weapon. "This is the final trap," he whispered. The clone walked in a circle around him. "You think you're different from the others. You think your fire trick, your clever mind, makes you special. I watched every species walk into this maze thinking they were the exception. He stepped closer. They all died." John looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not like them." The clone raised an eyebrow. "Prove it." Suddenly, the glass chamber flickered and walls closed in, separating John and the clone. Now they were in a mirrored arena. Each side could see the other. One would walk out. John breathed deeply. He pulled out the flint and sparked it. The flame appeared again, dancing in the cold air. But it wasn't for attack. It was for focus. He remembered what fire meant. Light, warmth, life. All the things the maze couldn't understand. The clone pulled out a sleek alien blade. No fire, just cold steel. John spoke first. "You're a copy, nothing more." The clone replied calmly. "I'm the perfect version of you, the one who would win this maze without mercy." The walls opened. The fight began. John dodged the first strike. Fast, too fast. The clone moved like him, but without hesitation. No fear, no breath wasted. John ducked low, rolled, and threw a pipe he kept hidden, one he bent earlier into. A boomerang-shaped dot bounced off the wall, struck the clone's leg. A small wound, but enough to slow him. John ran not away, but toward a panel he noticed earlier. Wires still live. He yanked them out and twisted the ends together. Sparks flew. The clone paused, confused. John lit his flint again, heating the wires, then shoved them against the ground where the clone stood. Electric shock. The clone screamed, dropped the blade. John moved fast, grabbed it, pointed it at the clone's neck, but didn't strike. Instead, he said, "Mercy. That's what makes me human." The clone looked up, eyes twitching. "Mercy is weakness." John shook his head. "No. It's what makes us stronger." The clone disappeared, vanished like smoke. The chamber faded. And then John realized the truth. There never was a clone. He'd been fighting his own reflection. his own darkest thoughts given shape by the maze. Creel staggered back into the light, his eyes wide. "You fought nothing," he said, "just shadows." John looked down at his hands. They were shaking. He dropped the blade. "It's trying to break me," he said quietly, piece by piece. Creel stepped forward. "Then why does it fear you so much?" Because John knew the answer now. The maze didn't hate humans. It didn't even understand them, but it couldn't predict them, and that made it afraid. "We're close to the core," John said. Behind them, a door opened slowly. Warm air drifted out, but this time it felt inviting, and that was the most dangerous feeling of all. Cliffhanger. As they walked through, something followed them in the shadows, not the maze, not a creature, but someone watching from beyond the stars, and they just whispered one word to their command station, Earth. The voice in the wall's door hissed shut behind them. John Carter and Creel stepped into a room unlike any other they had seen so far. It was silent, too silent. No machinery, no echoing vents, no alarms, just a deep, still quiet that made every breath sound loud. The walls were made of smooth black stone that didn't reflect light. The air smelled faintly of something sweet, but also wrong, like flowers grown in darkness. John slowed his steps. His boots didn't even make a sound. Creel whispered, "I don't like this." John nodded, "Me neither." Then the walls spoke, not with words, not with sound, with memory. John blinked hands. Suddenly he wasn't in the room anymore. He was on Earth, in the hospital room where his sister Anna had once stayed. The white walls, the faint beep of the heart monitor, the sunlight through the window. She was sitting up in bed, smiling, the thin but still full of light. "John," she said softly, "you came back." He felt tears in his eyes. "Anna." Howled, he stepped forward, but his foot hit cold stone. The illusion cracked. The voice returned, this time as a whisper in his ear. "Your greatest strength is your heart, so I will use it to destroy you." John gritted his teeth. "You're not real." The hospital faded. He was back in the dark room again. Creel stood nearby, growling and swiping at the air. "What are these visions?" Creel hissed. "I saw my hatchlings, my den. I heard my mate calling me home." John looked around. The walls were pulsing slightly like lungs breathing. He touched one gently. It was warm. Alive. "The maze is not just a place," John said slowly. "It's an entity, a living system that reads our minds, uses our memories, speaks to us in our own fears." Creel's claws clicked nervously. "Then why are we still alive?" John frowned. "Because we're teaching it something new." Suddenly, the room changed. The floor beneath them shimmered and collapsed, shifting their bodies downward in a slow spiral. They didn't fall, they sank, like being pulled into thought. Now they stood in a long hallway lit by floating orbs of light. Along the walls, written in glowing gold letters, were words in hundreds of alien languages. Some said things like, "Pain is the answer," Only strength survives. Emotion is a weakness. Obey. But one line was in English, just one. Why do you protect the weak? John stopped in his tracks. The lights dimmed, and then a voice came not in his head, not through speakers, but from the walls themselves. It was deep, gentle, and disturbingly curious. I'd have ended thousands. I have judged kings, monsters, warriors, machines. But you confuse me. Why do you help the one beside you when he is not your kind? John turned toward Creel, then looked up at the ceiling, because survival means nothing if I lose who I am. The walls pulsed. The lights turned red. The voice returned, less curious now, more cold. Then you are broken. John stepped forward. No, I'm human. We don't win because we're stronger. We win because we care. Silence. Then the lights flickered. The hallway bent, yes. Actually bent and ray formed into a massive chamber, circular and wide-like. A coliseum in the center. A single podium. On it, a red crystal, glowing, pulsing, alive. John approached it. Creel stayed behind. Be careful, Creel warned. That feels sacred. John stepped forward. As his fingers brushed the crystal. The entire room went white, like lightning inside his skull. He was in the heart of the labyrinth. The walls faded away, revealing images of all the other contestants, some frozen in death, some still burning, some whispering final prayers. And then, Earth. It appeared above him like a hologram. His home. The crystal spoke through him, now using his own voice. John Carter of Earth. You were expected to fail, but instead, you made me ask questions. You created conflict within my code, emotion, doubt, curiosity. John was shaking. I don't want to destroy you, the maze continued, because you represent what I cannot calculate. And then, without warning, the floor shattered. John fell again, this time alone. No Kreel. No fire. No tricks. Just him, in a void of black silence. And from that darkness came something slow, something ancient, the true creator of the maze. Not machine, not alien, but a voice older than stars. It whispered, are you ready for the final test? John opened his eyes and saw something standing in front of him, a little girl. And but this time, she wasn't smiling. She was crying. And in her hand was a gun, pointed straight at John. The final door and the death he outsmarteth black void was still. Silent. Cold. John Carter stood face to face with his younger sister, Anna, or at least something that looked exactly like her. She wore the same flower pattern dress she had the day he left Earth. Her cheeks were wet with tears, her small hands trembling as she held a gun pointed at his chest. John didn't move. This was not real. Couldn't be. But it felt real. The pain in his heart was real. Put it down, Anna. John whispered softly, this isn't you. She took a step forward. I waited, John, she said, her voice small. I waited for you to come home. You promised me, but you didn't come back. He flinched. No, he said, I didn't, but I'm still fighting for you. Her hands tremble. The barrel of the gun didn't lower dot around them. The darkness shimmered. Thousands of stars lit up in the void. Like a map of the galaxy was being painted across a canvas of nothingness. And then the voice returned, dot cold, deep, watching. This is your final trial. The labyrinth no longer needs tests of strength. You have shown your species is more than flesh. But now we test your spirit, kill the illusion, save yourself. John stared into Anna's eyes. Then he dropped to his knees. I won't. The gun clicked. She didn't shoot. The girl blinked. The tears vanished. Her skin shimmered. Her dress melted into glowing wires. She stepped backward and then dissolved like dust and wind. John was alone again, but something had changed. A soft light appeared in the distance. A door, glowing golden, unlike the cold metal doors before. He stood up slowly and walked toward it. No traps, no monsters. No tricks, just silence and light. When he stepped through, he wasn't inside the maze anymore. He was outside on a balcony hanging over a massive alien city made of crystal and stone. The sky was silver. Towers reached into the clouds. Machines floated like birds. Beings from a dozen different worlds stood waiting, watching, and at the center of them all, a being tall and featureless, a body made of light, the mazekeeper, the true architect of the death labyrinth. You solved it, the mazekeeper said in a voice that wasn't a voice. It was inside him, outside him, all around, not with weapons, not with violence, but with choices, human choices. John's legs almost gave out. He had made it. He was the only one to survive. From behind him, the balcony door opened again, and to his shock, Creel stepped through. Bloody, limping, burned, but alive. John's eyes widened. You, I thought, Creel growled, but it was weak. The maze needed a witness. John helped him stand. The mazekeeper raised one glowing hand. You passed the final door not because you were clever, but because you knew when not to act. That is the rarest move of all. Then the sky above shifted, forming a giant screen dot. It showed her thought blue and beautiful. Then it showed millions of eyes watching, species across the galaxy tuning into the broadcast. The death labyrinth wasn't just a test dot, it was a spectacle. A galactic ritual, a way to measure the worth of civilizations, and Earth had just made its mark. The mazekeeper's voice returned. We will remember this day, the day a human outsmarted death, not with violence, but with mercy, with memory, with the smallest of flames. John pulled out his old flint FI or ESTA or T or dot, held it up, clicked it once, spark, flame, light. The crowd was silent. Then thunderous applause. Even the sky seemed to shimmer with approval. But John didn't smile. He turned to the mazekeeper and said quietly, the others, they all died. I want their names remembered. The mazekeeper nodded. They will be honored. Their sacrifice helps shape your path, and your victory opens the gate. John frowned. What gate? The mazekeeper extended a hand toward the sky dotted cracked, literally cracked, as if the fabric of space itself was opening. Behind it, a new galaxy, untouched, unmapped, full of stars. The winner of the death labyrinth, said the mazekeeper, earns the right to choose what comes next. Exploration, peace, power, war. The galaxy watches. John turned to Creel. I choose understanding, he said. Creel blinked slowly. You humans, you are strange. John laughed. So are you. They stood together, watching the crack in space open wider. Earth was about to be invited into something far greater than they had ever imagined. Not because of weapons, not because of soldiers, but because one human armed with a flint, a memory, and a mind had outsmarted death itself. Cliffhanger ending as the stars above opened. Far away on a distant world, a hooded alien turned away from the screen. His eyes were full of fury. He slammed his fist on the table. A human one. That changes everything. And then he whispered, prepare the resistance. The survivor who changed the gamut stars had opened Dot, and John Carter stood at the edge of history. Above him, the skies no longer held the quiet of mystery. They sang with possibility. The death labyrinth was over. The gate to the Galactic Council, the long secret alliance that ruled the balance of power across 1,000 star systems, had opened for Earth. And he, a single man with no armor, no advanced weapon, just a mind, full of clever ideas and a firestarter in his pocket, had forced the universe to take notice. But the war hadn't ended. Dot had shifted. The mazekeeper spoke once more, its voice now clearer, less cryptic. It hovered slightly above the ground, body glowing faintly gold. John Carter of Earth, you will return home not as a victor of blood, but as a symbol of change. Your people are no longer hidden in the corner of the galaxy. They are seen. John didn't speak. His mind was spinning. He wasn't thinking of politics or fame. He was thinking of Anna, his little sister, still waiting back on Earth, still sick. He had come for her. I want the cure, John said flatly, the one the council said Earth hadn't earned. The mazekeeper turned toward the crystal screen, hovering in the sky. The Earth rotated slowly within it. Then a new image appeared. Medical data, strands of alien DNA, glowing molecules dancing in the air. It will be delivered. John exhaled for the first time in peace, but the peace didn't last. Out behind him, a low whirring began. A drone descending, not like the ones the maze had used for monitoring. This one was sleek, armored, and painted in deep red. A signal blinked on the drone's head. Transmission intercepted. Unauthorized broadcast. Creel stepped forward, groaning, blood still staining his arm. That symbol, it belongs to the silent cast. They were watching the test tube before John could react. The drone projected a hologram, A face appeared, sharp, alien, familiar. John had seen it once in the early days of the maze in a flickering screen deep in the control rooms, but now it spoke directly. John Carter of Earth, you were never meant to survive. Your success has broken an ancient order. There will be consequences. John stood firm. You saw a man with no armor walk through your trap, and it scared you. You brought chaos. The alien hissed. Now we bring correction. The drone's body opened a small missile ready to fire, but before it launched, a beam of fire shot through the sky, not from John, not from Creel, from the Maze Keeper. The drone exploded midair. The council chamber trembled. The Maze Keeper turned toward the stars. Let it be known, Earth has been claimed under protection of the Core Alliance. Any act of aggression will be met with equal force. The sky shivered. The war had just changed hands. Hours later, John sat alone in a quiet room overlooking the alien city. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, he rested. Creel walked in, a fresh bandage across his chest. You changed everything, human, he said, sitting across from him. John looked down at the flint in his hand. Just a tiny spark maker, a joke, of a tool in the eyes of advanced civilizations. But it had worked, not because of fire, but because of how he used it. Will Earth be ready? Creel asked. John nodded. Not yet, but we'll learn. Creel smirked. You humans learn fast, annoyingly fast. They both laughed, but then John's wrist device blinked. A message from Earth. Your sister is awake. The treatment worked. Tears filled John's eyes. He had done it, not just for Earth, not just for victory, but for her. In the Galactic core, the Council gathered. Leaders from star systems older than Earth's sun debated, argued, warned. But one voice rose above them. Old Dot the Maze Keeper. He survived the Labyrinth. He changed the outcome not by strength, but by spirit. He questioned what no one had dared. This is the power of a human mind. Many nodded. Others didn't. But the vote was final. Earth would be welcomed. Not as servants, not as soldiers, but as equals, and far beyond, in a dark asteroid belt, something stirred. A massive fleet, painted black, began to move. Ships without lights, engines that didn't hum. A shadow army, and in the heart of it, a hooded figure stood before a mirror, watching the footage of John Carter, watching him light that tiny flame over and over again. He rewrote the rules. The figure whispered, now we burn his world to ash. Epilogue. The flame back on Earth. John returned not as a hero but as a quiet man. The media called him the Maze Walker. Children drew pictures of him with fire in his hand. Scientists studied his every word. But John only cared about one thing. He sat in the hospital room with Anna, holding her hand as she slept peacefully. The fire starter sat on the table beside him, used, worn, still full of hope. Final line, and in the skies above Earth, something watched and whispered, he didn't escape the death labyrinth. He lit the way out.